Okay, so we left off on Kuf Chav Zayin and Beis.
We had the two dots.
We did the first three lines after the two dots. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines up on the wide lines. Yeah, so this again, the sugya that we're talking about, and will be tonight's stuff too. This is leftovers from yesterday's stuff. Is about the nemanus of the father saying whether son is a bechor or not. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar, he says benihu. If a guy says he's my son, the chazer Amar avdihu, and then he says he's not my son, he's my slave. Right? And the Rashbam says it makes no difference whether it was toichidei dibur or not toichidei dibur. All right, so again, the first guy said, first he says the son, this guy's my son, then he says he's my slave. Eino neman, he is not believed. All right?
He couldn't
Meaning,
be both.
can a son be a slave?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm sure a lot of sons claim that they are slaves.
Yeah, that's besides the point.
I was going to say, we're getting a glimpse into Rachman's parenting skills here.
He said, Avdi, my slave. No?
Yeah, he's, I don't know.
Doesn't the Rashbam say it's more, it doesn't work because it's the other way? Nobody would call their slave their son.
Well, that's really the next, well, that's right. That's why he's not believed. But the other way around, he will be believed, which is the next case, right?
I'm saying that's why.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why the Rashbam here says that Toikadei Dibur doesn't work.
Because he later says Kivin Shehigid, but in the dinim of Kivin Shehigid, if you're Chayzer Toikadei Dibur, you could be Chayzer.
Right. So I think he's going like what David's saying. I think what his emphasis is what David's saying, which is that nobody's making the mistake of calling his Eved, his son an Eved.
But my point is that if I'm machish my edus b'soich didibur, even if it's a stira minei what I said previously,
right?
But if it's b'soich didibur, we don't say kivin shehigi. We say you could be chayzer under the original edus, no? So who cares if it's a complete akasha?
This is not edus.
According to Rashbam, it is.
Well, it's maybe a form of edus. You know what it comes
the
up?
Rashbam said the idas piv hamin and Torah. It's some level of edus, and the Rashbam ties in the idea of kivin shehigi.
Yeah, it's not easy to understand this. You know where it comes up with the mashav to keep it into the inyan of the yaima, right? Mashav aruch the geshem and Ma'arid Atol, right? So if you say Ma'arid Atol, see, that's not a problem. You say Ma'arid Atol, but then you go back to Mashav aruch Ma'arid Geshem, that's fine. All you did was say an extra praise. But if you do it the other way around, right, when you're not supposed to say it, and then you say it, how do you toich k'dei dibur that? How do you toich k'dei dibur saying Mashav aruch Ma'arid Geshem by mistake? How do you change that back? You go back to Machal Chaim B'Chesed. I'm not Machal.
You say whoops.
That's right.
You said after Gibor, you also
Mashav aruch Ma'arid Geshem.
You said
not now, after Pesach.
Yeah, you go back to a few words. Oh, because I say, if you say what I'm told, then you can. If you don't say anything, what do? You go back and you don't say anything.
How do you go back and type Kedei Dibur on that?
And it's not a question if you say what I'm told.
No, that's this way. That's not a problem. And whatever it is, so I am not sure why the Rashbam says that it doesn't help Kedei Dibur. But I think the pshat is because you don't even have a tongue slip. I don't know if that's what David was trying to say, but nobody would even have a tongue slip like that. But I don't know. Let's see. Somebody B'ni, who the guy says he's my son, and then he goes and he says he's my Eved, and he's not believed. Avdihu, but if he says he's my slave, then he says no, he's really my son. Then it's Neman. Why? Because what he meant was the Meshamashli Ka'avdaka Amar. It's like Rachman saying that he's Meshamashli like an Eved. That's what he meant. He says, I was just saying, oh hi, this is my slave. Unfortunately, there are guys that say that about their wife, right? But oh, this is my, yeah, fine. So he says it about his son, and then he says, oh, but no, it's really my son, right? V'chelufe, and the opposite is by abes hameches on a house of taxes, meaning the guy's going to pay his taxes. So then you pay taxes on having slaves, right? It's not just now that you pay payroll tax. You had to pay payroll tax back then too. So if you say you're eved, so then it's gonna be I'm a kuf chazayin of a base, 4 thin lines up. Yeah. But by a tax house, it's actually more. It's better for this guy to be a son, not a slave. Right. So what does this mean? How you over? I'll base on mechas. The guy's passing through the tax. He's going through the toll. Vamar benihu, and he says he's my son. B'chazer Vamar avdihu, and then he changes his mind. He says that he's an eved. So then he's Neman. Because he's not, the only reason why he said he's a son is because he wanted to get out of paying taxes. Omar Avdiyu, but if first he said he's a slave, then Eino Neman, then he's not believed, because nobody's doing that. Meaning, if a guy calls him his son and then he decides, if a guy says he's an Eved, and then he goes and says his son, why would anybody make that mistake? Right? So Elamai must be that Hitaka is an Eved, his Eved, and not his son.
And why does he want to change it now?
Well, that's the question. There's nothing to be gained from it, right? So that's why he's not believed. No, that's why he's not. If it was really his son, he would never have called him an Eved.
But why does he want to call him a son now?
What?
Why do you want to call him a son now?
For his Yerusha, whatever things.
Let him give him a Torah now.
What?
Let him give it to him.
Well, maybe after he dies or whatever. That's the same way you're going to answer the kashas yesterday, right? Anyway, so that's that. So Meisvei, one of the last of the thin lines. If a guy was working for his father like a son, I mean, he was helping him out. Bava Amar benihu, and he said he's my son. And then when he said he's an eved, he's not believed. If he was working with him like a slave, right? Meaning. The first way he's being mishamishim like a son. He's helping him get dressed, taking care of his more personal things. Now we're talking about what he's being mishamishim like an eved, mopping the floor, I guess, that type of thing. And then he comes and he says he's my eved. And then he comes and he says he's my son. And he's not believed. Right? So what do you see? That was saying that he's not believed. If you call him an eved, and then you call him a son. And Rabbi Yochanan had said he is believed because what he meant was that he works for me like an Eved. So the Ka'arula Avda Meitzar. What he said, he didn't stam call him an Eved. He called him an Eved who has a Meitzar literally means a boundary of 100, meaning he's worth 100. So what does this mean? My Meitzar Ma. What does it mean? He has a boundary of 100. Meitzar Avda Kuf Zuzi. He's an Eved that's worth 100 zuz. So and then if he says that, and then he says he's my son, now we don't believe him. It can't be. He already has him so evaluated. He calls him he's my Eved that's worth 100 zuz. That's too much. If he backtracks from that, we don't care. Fine. So shalach, meaning we don't care for what he says. Now we get into a whole bunch of things that Rav Abba said, psakim that Rav Abba said to Rav Yosef Bar Chama. Yeah, we have like a whole lot of it. Yeah.
It looks like from this Gemara that we finally reached the Gemara where we go with context. We've had like hundreds of Mishnayos where we've asked, why don't you ask him? Why don't you see what he was saying? If he bought it for this, what does he do? No, we can't do any of that. Here, finally, we have something where it's all context.
Yeah, what he's saying, the Nemonis is based on the context?
Yeah. And until this point in Shas, we have always had an answer for that.
I hear.
No, yeah.
I hear you. I don't know. You're saying because I don't know if this is like okay. Akiva was saying before that it's really an Adus. It's an Adus type thing, right? But maybe this is less than that. We are taking the situation into account before we decide. But you're right. There could be other variables. You're saying that can maybe change things.
And you reminded me before 2 lines ago, a meal I was by Shabbos Day in Lakewood. This is 25 or something years ago. And the guy's singing Baruch Kalelion, and he gets the last thing, and he goes, B'neichem, and he points to his sons on the one side, he goes, B'nei Seichem, he goes, points to his daughters on the other side of the table, and he goes, Aved, he goes, V'gam Shifcha, not doing anything now.
Yeah. All right, no comment on that. Yeah. All right, very good. Okay, so fine. So Sholach Le on the bottom. So now Sholach Le Rav Abba Rav Yosef Bar Chama. He sent him a bunch of different psakim. A guy tells his friend Avdi Ganavti, you stole my Eved. Who Amar? And he says, of course, like Ganavti, right? So it's your classic. He said, she said. This guy says, you stole my Eved. He says, I did not. Mativoy etzlecha. So when he said to him, what is he doing by you? He said, if you didn't steal him, what's he doing by you? So of course he says back, Ata machartoli. You sold him to me. On to today's daf. Ata nesatoli b'matono. You gave him me as a present. Ritzainchi shava b'tol. He said, if you want, then he opens his mouth. So right then it's the give and the take. However, he says you stole it from me, and the other one says I didn't. I got it as a present or I bought it. But then he says, if you want, swear that this Eved belongs to you, and then you could have him. Vinishpan, the guy decides to swear. Right? Then he cannot take it back. Right? And he gets the slave. Right? Meaning, again, the story happened. The guy comes over and says, "You stole my slave." The other guy tells him, "No, you didn't sell my slave. I didn't steal your slave. I bought it from you, or I got it from you as a matana." But then he tells him, "But if you want the slave, swear." And the guy swears. But now the guy can't say, "Oh, I don't want you to swear. I don't care that you swore. It doesn't mean anything to me." Right? And the guy gets the slave. And I mean, he cannot back out of this voluntary thing that he told the guy. Right? My kamash malon. So I'm going to ask, so what's your chiddush? That a guy makes an offer, he can't back out? What's the chiddush? Tina, we learned it. Amar loy, if two guys fighting, so one of them says, Neman alai abba, and they're trying to pick a bezdin here. Right? So the guy says, my father, I trust my father, and he could be one of the dayanim. Neman alai avicha, or even your father, I trust him too. I think that they're legit people. They can be Neman alai shloisha roye bakar, and 3 roye bakar are Neman on me. Meir Aimer, Yochar Lachsavoy, he is able to back out. Meaning, this is a chiddush. Normally, a Roye Bakar is considered a crook, and a father is not. A father is impartial. Is partial. I'm sorry, and certainly the father of the other side is partial. So they can't be dayanim. But this guy said, "I'll take them. It's no problem." So Rameir says you're allowed to be chayzer, but you can't be chayzer. So that's what he's saying, and we're going to go with the chachamim because they're the right. So the same thing here. This guy says, I'm willing to accept the shvua, even if it was a situation where it wasn't a shvua. I'm willing to accept the shvua, and I'll give you back your slave. So, what's the chiddush? So Gemara answers, "Hakamash malon the be'eten loch machloikis." That that's where there's a machloik. The machloik. So Allah the chachamim, and Allah is like the chachamim, right? Meaning, how does it go again? want to make sure I say it correctly. Yeah, so meaning when they're having a machlokes about something, right? So then there the chachamim would say their din, but meaning maybe there's a difference in the cases, right? Meaning he's willing to take a dayan. So that's okay. So that's not such a big deal. So he's you agreed to take him as a dayan. So then that's it. But where there's actual things changing hands, maybe not. So he's saying that no, the machlokes applies even there, and the halach is like the chachamim. So he's teaching two things. He's teaching that it's even in a case where it's going to come down to him losing his slave or whatever property it is, and it's going to come and the halach is like the chachamim. So that's the chiddush of Rav Ava. Fine. So that's number one. Number two, Shalach le Rav Ava le Rav Yosef bar Chama. He sent to Rav Yosef bar Chama halacha goyim min avodim. The halacha is that we collect from avodim, but Rav Nachman Amar ain't goyim. Rav Nachman says we don't collect. So this is talking about, we discussed this the last couple of days, that when a guy dies and he leaves over debt, so his debt comes out of his inheritance, right? It comes out of the will first, but only land, not anything else. Only land they can use to pay back. If he just leaves over cash, they don't use it to pay back. So the question is, what are avodim? Are avodim land, or avodim, if they're land, then they could use an eved and pay back? Meaning, the father owed $1,000 to a guy, and the Yisayimim can say to the person that's owed the money, here's an eved instead of $1,000. Can they do that or not? Is an eved looked at like karka? In which case they can, or does it look like metaltalin, which they can't? So it's a machlokes. So he says the halacha is that we're goyver from the avodim. Rav Nachman says ain't goyver. Fine. Shalach le Rav Abba le Rav Yosef bar Chama. So Rav Abba sent to Rav Yosef bar Chama. Halacha shlishi b'sheni kosher. A shlishi to a sheni is kosher. This comes up, who you want to use for edim by a ksuba. That's pretty much the only time this comes up. So can you use a second cousin, third cousin, first cousin once removed, etc., etc. So basically what the Gemara is saying here is that you have three levels. You have the father, that's a father and his brother. That's generation number one. Generation number two is their kids. That's what we call first cousins. Generation number three, well, there's 2.5 and there's 3. 2.5, I'm calling it 2.5, would be first cousin once removed. All right. And the third generation would be second cousins. Yeah. So what he's saying is the halach is that a shlishi can say edus for a sheni, which means basically a first cousin once removed can say edus on a first cousin once removed. Meaning, to use an example, Peretz's grandson, he doesn't have a grandson, granddaughter.
Me and you are your kids.
Oh, Taka, yeah. That's very good, Taka. Me and you are first cousins. So my kids can say edus on you, or for you, or whatever. It's not a puzzle edus. My kids to you. That's first cousin once removed. That's what Rav Abba is saying. And then Rava says, Af Berishan. No, not only that, but my kid can say edus on Aaron Kaplan's father, which is his great uncle. He could even do that.
Doesn't it mean aspiration? Wouldn't that mean the first cousin?
No,
like this, right?
No, we're gonna see. We don't pass like this.
It doesn't mean that you can say edus on Aaron.
No, I mean, theoretically, no. That we for sure can. Well, let's see. Aparisha. And Mar Ravashi, Achsha Ba'aba Da'aba. And Mar Ravashi says that a person could even say on his father's father, meaning Mar Ravashi saying a second generation, meaning a grandson could say Edus on his grandfather, because that's far enough removed. So they're going down the line. Rav Abba initially says a first cousin once removed can say Edus on a first cousin. Rav is saying he could even say Edus on the next generation up, and Mar Ravashi is saying he even say Edus on his own grandfather. The less hilchos of Kamar Baravashi, the halacha is not like Mar Baravashi. All right. So I think by in the Iker Din, we would paskin that you could say. We don't do it. We don't even do third cousins. I think, as far as I know, we don't even do. I think most won't even do mechatanim by a chuppah. A lot of times that comes up. A guy wants to be mechabed his mechutin, to say, what do you be mechabed mechutin with if he's not a rabbi, right? So you want him to sign the ksuba, sign the t'nayim. I think most Masada Kedushans will not allow it, but that's not the halacha. It's not halacha. Yeah, fine. That was number 3. Number 4. Shalach le Rav Abba le Rav Yosef bar Chama hayedei le be'edus karka. Let's say a guy knew about edus, about land, meaning he knew how much land was sold, etc., before he became blind. Meaning a guy knew how much land was sold, and then he became blind. Now we know somebody blind is pasal edus, So, but he knew this edus before he became blind, and then he became blind. So pasal, he is pasal. Why? Because he's not going to be able to remember or know exactly what went on. The Shmuel Amar kosher. It's kosher. Efshar the mechaven matzrana. It could very well be that he knew the exact boundaries of a glima loy, but he cannot say edus on a glima on the clothing. Rav Sheshes Amar afilu glima, even on a glima. Efshar the mechaven midas arka midas rachma. Maybe he taka knew the exact measurements of the clothing in order to say edus on it.
Isn't there a shayla that's considered a simon?
Yes, I mean in Sanhedrin we'll see exactly. There's different types of interrogations. I don't remember which one is which.
No, legabe like a Shabbos Aveda.
Yes, I'm saying what does that have to do with this?
Well, I'm saying the same way. I'm saying if you don't hold it, that you could use that as a simon, it's not an identifying marker then.
He's saying that if you can't use it as a simon,
I'm saying the shitas, if it's not a simon legabe, simanim for Shabbos Aveda, then it's not an identifying marker. That's the reason why. So then it wouldn't help for him to identify it that way.
Right. So maybe that's machlokes.
Right.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah, aval nascha loy. But metal, like bars of gold or whatever, to say this on that doesn't work. All right, because how you can have a blind guy say edus on this is the bar of gold that he bought or sold or whatever it is. Rapapa Amar afilu nascha efshar the mechaven midas mishkaloisa. No, maybe he knew the exact weight of it, which again, like Akiva is saying, it's hard to understand because I'm sure there's multiple weights. Meaning there's multiple pieces of metal that have these weights. Fine. So Meisvei asks a kasha is a long kasha. If he knew his edus actually nasa chasnoi before he became the son-in-law, like we know a son-in-law cannot say edus on the father-in-law. But let's say he knew about the edus when he was single. Nasa chasnoi, then he became his son-in-law. Pikeach, if he was a smart person, literally, but it means he was normal. V'nischarish, and then he became deaf. Pisach, if he was literally from the word open, but it means he could see. Benistama, and then his eyes closed. Shafui, he was pure, meaning he was normal. Finishtatim became a shaita. Puzzle, they're all puzzle. Meaning they can't. We don't go with when the edus happen. It goes when the edus is given. But let's say he knew the edus actually nasa chasnei before he became his son-in-law. If nasa chasnei, then he did become his son-in-law. Umesa, Bita, and then his daughter died, meaning his wife, the guy's wife died. So now he became mutter. So again, he saw the Eidus when he was kosher Eidus. Then he became pasal Eidus. Then he went back to kosher Eidus. Pikeach v'nescharish v'chazav v'nespakach. Let's say he was pikeach, meaning he was able to hear, and then he became deaf, mute, and then he went back and became normal. Piseach v'nistama v'chazav v'nespasach. If his eyes were open and they became blind, then he went back to having them open. Shafoy v'nishtata v'chazav v'nishtafa. If he was normal and then he went and became a shait and then he went back to being normal, kosher. So then he is kosher. Ze'aklal. What's the rule? Kol shetchilasei. Now the main point of the kasha is going to come from this ze'aklal. The rule is kol shetchilasei esayfe bepsul bepaslus, when the beginning and the end is puzzle, meaning I'm not and either or. If at the beginning, meaning when the thing happened, or when there was Eidus, whichever one, he was puzzles and then he's puzzled. Right? Let's say the beginning and the end was kosher, and in the middle he became puzzle Eidus, then we say it's kosher. Whatever it is, you see from this brisa, the brisa says that if the beginning he was puzzle, or at the end he was puzzle, then it's puzzle, which is not like those 3 man da'amrim. So the Gemara turn on Tamar Beis now to Yufta to Kulu. So this brisa slugs up all of these cases. To Yufta, we say yes, they are slugged up. Fine. Now I forgot already. No, I'm saying I forgot what number we're up to. Now we're up to the 5th already.
Article says what cites the 5th report.
Oh, so there's one machlokes Rashbam and Taisus. I forgot to say. When the Eidus, when he says that it's kosher Eidus on the grandfather. Yes, so the Rashbam says that it should be the grandfather. And Taisus, Bava Ravashi says, even Sheni B'Sheni is puzzle, and Kol Sheken, your grandfather. Meaning, if a second cousin or really first cousins are puzzles, then how could a guy be believed on his grandfather? It says, da'aba kosher tfei tispalag dara. That it's a separation of a dar, so therefore it's okay. Right? And of course you can't even further than that. Yeah. But the Rashbam says it's forever. Because it's b'nei banim or im kibanim. Okay, whatever. It's interesting choices. Fine. 5th number. Phil, you said it's 5. Okay, on top of on the base. Sholach Rav Abel Rav Yosef Bar Chama. Ha'omer al tinoik bein habanim nemon. If somebody says that a tinoik between boys is nemon, Rav Yochanan Omer ain't a nemon. What does this mean? He's a tinoik between sons. So my Komer, what is this saying? So Amar Abaya, Hachi Komer, this is what it's saying. Ha'omer al tinoik bein habanim. A guy says about a baby, literally means a baby or a kid, between Banim Yirash Kol Nichsei, he should be the Yirish. Nemon, he's believed, Rav Yochanan ben Broika, like Rav Yochanan ben Broika. Meaning, Rav Yochanan ben Broika holds, we'll see this in tomorrow's daf or the next day's daf. We've had it quoted a few times that Rav Yochanan ben Broika holds that he's allowed to give all his Yerusha to one of his kids.
What about the Bechor getting double?
What? He's not saying by a Bechor. He's just saying that, let's say there's no Bechor. Right? So Rabbi Yochanan holds you can do this. So the Rabbi Yochanan himself says, Eina Neman, he's not believed, Kirabanan, like the Rabbanan who hold you can't do this. Right? So that's what it means, Tinoik bein habanim. So Maskul Rabba, Hai Neman, Veina Neman. What's the word Neman? Believe, not believe. We're talking about inheriting. What does it have to do with Neman? Yirush v'lo Yirush. It should say Yirush and lo Yirush. Elam Rabba Hachikama. This is what it's saying. Aimer al tinoik bein habanim. Somebody says on a tinoik bein habanim, Becharhu, that he's my Bechar. Neman, he's believed. Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yehuda says that a father is believed. Right? We said that yesterday's stuff. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Einay Neman, then he's not Neman, Kirabanan, like the Rabbanan.
Okay, according to this, what's Tinoik bein habanim? child amongst sons, the
Uh-huh.
baby. You said before it's a baby.
Yeah.
Amongst his
Well, a
sons.
tinoik is a child.
Right. So you have right in front of him an older
You don't know who said you saying sons means older.
versus a tinnik.
I don't know. I hear. Yeah, and then we also said that yesterday's daf that the only time they have this machlokes is when they when there's a fight about whether this guy's a bechor. But if they just moved out of town and somebody needs a edus that the kid is a bechor, so then the father is certainly believed. Okay, fine. Shalach le number 6. Shalach le Rav Abel Rav Yosef Bar Chama. A guy says, Titol ishti ke'echad min abanim. My wife is going to take a chelek with the same amount as my kids. I mean, let's say he has 3 kids. So he says they're splitting it 4 ways because my wife's getting. Now, obviously, this is talking about a shchiv meira, because otherwise the wife is going against the Torah because the wife does not yash. It's talking about a guy when he's dying, he says, I'm giving my wife an equal portion of my inheritance. Well, he can't use the word inheritance, right? But he says, "Titol ishtek echad abanim netelas kechad abanim." That
He
she
can
takes.
if he says it exactly like that.
Well, if he says he has to use one
He said
lashon
giving.
of right, he has to use one lashon, right? That was yesterday's daf. So netelas kechad abanim. Amar Rava uben nechasim shalasho, but she only gets the stuff that belonged to him right now. But let's say he said it now, and he's going to die in 2 hours. But an hour before he dies, he wins the lottery. So then the wife doesn't get any of that. She only gets what he had, what he owned when he said this thing. And also with sons that come after that. Right? Meaning, let's say she has a baby. Right? After he said this thing. So then that baby also gets a chelik of that one's also going to split. So split the Yerusha.
But he gets stuff that comes after? Or he doesn't?
Not he, the kids. The kids get it.
Does he get stuff that
the new son?
part of the lottery, yeah.
Yeah, l'chayra.
Okay.
I would think so. Yeah. Fine. Okay, then number 7. If a guy he brings a shtar chayv to his friend and he says, you owe me money. Malva, the malva, this is real chazor from Bava Metzia now. There's a shtar chayv, and the malva says here's the shtar, he never paid me. The loiva omer parati mechza, and the loiva says I paid him half, which sounds like a moide b'miktzas. He's moide halfway. But Adam Eden shapara kuloi. But the Adam say that he paid the whole thing. Now it makes no sense. Why would a guy, if there's Adam that said that he paid the whole thing, why would he say that he paid half? He's costing himself money for no good reason. There are Adam. If this guy would have kept his mouth shut, talking about a guy opening his mouth at the wrong time. Right? If he would have kept this, the Malva says he never paid me. We have Adam that he paid fully. And he opened his mouth and said he paid half. So what's going on over here? Right? So Reza Nishba. So what we have to do is he has to swear that he paid half. And then the lender gets that half from nechasim that are b'nei chayrin, meaning nechasim that are not meshubah to anybody. Right, meaning whatever property he has now and that wasn't sold to somebody else. But fields that are meshubad, meaning fields that this borrower already sold to somebody else, he doesn't have to give those fields. The Amri, because what are the people that bought those fields are going to say, Hanana Edim something away. We're Samech on these Edim. We assume when we bought this field, we went to the what's it called? Those things that they make sure that this house wasn't title. The title company told me that we have Adam, that he paid back the loans. So we trust those Adam. So Mamela, we believe those Adam. We don't lose our field. But right, meaning because the lender's going to say, what do you mean? He owes me half. So that half should come even from land that this guy sold after he borrowed the money from me. But the people that bought the fields are going to say, no, there's no title on this. We have Adam that he paid it back. Fine. But Rabbi Kiva, the Amar, and even according to Rabbi Kiva. So this is going way back in Bava Metzia. This is talking about a case where a malva, the lender had a star that said that he owes him sloyim. He lent him sloyim, plural, sloyim, right? But it doesn't say how many sloyim. The lender says it was 5 sloyim. The borrower says it was 3. Now, the minimum that it for sure was 2, because sloyim is plural. The minimum of sloyim is 2. So it's a similar case. Here you have a star that for sure meant 2. The lender says it was 3, and the borrower says that the lender says it was 5, and the borrower says it was 3. So again, it's the same thing. The borrower, for whatever reason, messed himself over. If he would have just said 2, then he would have won, because 2 is for sure it, and he's denying, and the mal would have to prove it. But instead, he said 3. So is that considered Ma'idah b'miktsas or not? So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar holds it's Ma'idah b'miktsas. Rabbi Kiva says that it's not a Ma'idah b'miktsas. It's basically like Hashavas Aveda, right? Why? Because the star you can't prove anything more than the star is for 2 sloyim, right? Fine. So that's what we're saying. But even Rabbi Kiva, who says it's Hashavas Aveda, meaning sorry, I stopped too early. But feel Rabbi Kiva Domer Meishav Aveda, even according to Rabbi Kiva, who says in that case with the 5 and the 3 and the 2 that he's considered a Meishav Aveda, and he doesn't have to swear about anything. That's what is no Adam. So the star had 2 and this guy said 3. Fine. But where there's Adam, so now Ersuse Irsas, the reason why he said half is that he was afraid that they were gonna say Eidos for the lender, right? Meaning he knew that these guys were gonna say Eidos. He just didn't know what the Eidos was gonna say, right? And they might just say that he didn't pay back anything. So because he was worried about that, he said half. He figured he'll say half. So maybe there he would be liable. So Maskefler Mar Baravashi Adarava. He says it should be the opposite. Even according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, who holds in the case again where the Malva says he owes me 5 coins, the Loiva says it's 3 coins, and the Shtar just says Sloyim, and Rav Shimon ben Elazar holds he's Maidim and Miktsas, and a Maidim Miktsas has to swear, right? So Afilu the Rav Shimon ben Elazar Damar Maidim Miktsas Ataina Havi Hani Mili Heichad Deleka Edim the Kamasai. That's only where there's no Edim to help him out. But where there's Edim that are supporting him or helping him, Vada Meshav Aveda Havi. So for sure it's considered a Meshav Aveda. Right?
Why isn't the star considered Eidos? Because it doesn't say 2 specifically, just says slime.
In the star, it is Eidos, but the Eidos is only on the slime. Yeah, exactly.
But that's the same as the Eidim here.
No, the Eidim here is full. The Eidim and the slime is only 2.
2 is the equivalent of our full.
No, 5. Right, it's 5. Mama wants
that's
5.
on the Leiva side. We're talking about Eidim on the. That's on the Malva side. We're talking about Eidim on the Leiva side.
What? No, but if Shimon Elazar says it's Maidim Miktas by the case of 3, that's only where there's no Eidim. The Kavasai, there's no Eidim to help him out. Right? The Eidim are only saying 2. They're not saying 3.
Out? To help the Malva or the Leiva?
The Leiva.
So the star is helping him out.
The star is only helping him out for 2, not 3. Here, the difference is he has the Eidim to come aside, but where there are Eidim that will help him out, right? Meaning, the question is, what came first? Was he Maida first, and then the Eidim came, or the Eidim came and then he was Maida?
The Rashbam says he was made the first in the original case,
right? So
not
then,
the Rabbi Kiva Shimon Elazar case, but in the
correct,
yeah,
correct. He was Maida first, then came. He's a loser. I mean, whatever.
no, but I'm saying so he doesn't have the Eidim really backing him up. There's no Meshav Aved over there.
Well, it backs him up later,
right? But the point is, when he was Maida, he had nothing. He wasn't a real loser. He had no Eidim at the time. That's my point.
Correct. Yeah, Nachanami. But here we're saying, so here, what in the case of Marbar Ravashi, we don't care whether he was Maida first, last. The main point is that the Eidos is pottering the loiva totally, right? But he added half himself. So Mamela, that's for sure a Hashavas Aveda. Right? So that's Vada and Meshav Aveda Havi. That's for sure a Meshav Aveda. Fine. So those are the 7 cases. So Dorish Marzutra Meshmedu Rav Shimi Barashi. Hilchasa B'chol Hanishmait. So all these 7 things that were taught, Kid Shalach Le Rav Abba Le Rav Yosef Bar Chama. Whatever Rav Abba sent to Rav Yosef Bar Chama, that is the emes. Some of Ravina Ravashi, so Ravina said to Ravashi, the Rav Nachman, my. What are you going to do with Rav Nachman? Why? Because we always know we passed like Rav Nachman. And we said that in the first, was the second case. The second case was, can the Yisayim pay back, how does it go? Can the Yisayim pay back their father's debts with an Eved? So Rav Abba said yes, and Rav Nachman said no. Now we know we always pass like Rav Nachman. So how could you say here that the halacha is like Rav Abba? So Amalei Ein Goy in. I'm sorry, he said Ein Goyven Masnina. We learned that he's not allowed to collect from an Eved. B'chein Amar Rav Nachman. So did said Rav Nachman. Meaning our Girsan Amar Aleph was Rav Nachman disagrees. We're changing it. We're saying no. Rav Nachman agrees and says that you cannot pay back with Eved, and that's where we pass it. Okay, if that's the case, so when you're saying the halacha is like Rav Abba, what's it coming to exclude? Right? Meaning, who's ever arguing with him on these things? So on Tamar Aleph. So if it's coming to exclude Rava, which was the case that Rava said that a guy is allowed to say Eidos on his great uncle, Maisifu, that's just adding, meaning we don't know that Rav Abba disagrees with this. We know Rav Abba said a din that a first cousin once removed could say Eidos on a first cousin. Came along Rava and he added on. Okay, so maybe he's just adding on. Who says there's any disagreement? Right? And either Marba Ravashi, and if it's a case of Marba Ravashi, yeah, which is that he can even say Eidos on his grandfather, less of a Marba Ravashi. We already know that Allah is not like Marba Ravashi. The Gemara said Allah is not like him. If you say it's coming to exclude Shmuel and Rav Sheshes and Rav Papa, who said that each one had a scenario where they would believe a person who's blind, that we also said to Yufta, you already slug those up. Ella, it must be coming to exclude Rabbi Yochanan, that a father is Nemon to that his son is a Bechor, even if his son is even if it's being contested. With a skafta demar baravashi, and also to say that we don't paskin like Mar Baravashi's kasha, which was about the Moedim Miktzos, right? Meaning that Mar Baravashi wanted to say he's a Meshav Aveda. We're saying we're not worried about Mar Baravashi, and the halacha is like Rav Abba, that we say that he he has to swear that he does have to swear al Moedim Mikzas. He's not considered a Meshav Aveda. If he was considered a Meshav Aveda, he wouldn't have to swear. But since he's a Moedim Mikzas, he does not have to. Since he's a Moedim Mikzas, he does have to swear. Yeah. Fine. Okay, we'll stop over there. A little technical today's daf.